I've actually always wondered how the British monarchy works within these countries that they use to conquer, like Australia, Canada, and all those. So this video might actually help us answer some of these questions. Let's get into it.
Charles III hasn't just become the reigning monarch of the United Kingdom, he's now officially the head of state for 14 countries outside of the UK known as Commonwealth Realms, from Australia and Canada to Belize and the Bahamas. Now, some of those countries are having fresh debates about cutting ties with the monarchy. But even if there's popular support, legal experts and scholars say that abolishing the British monarch as head of state can be legally challenging. So here's a look at some of the countries
How? Ask Zimbabwe. We did this.
talking about becoming republics and the challenges they could face moving forward. The 14 countries that have kept the British monarch as their sovereign were all part of the British Empire. And just like in the UK, the role of the monarch in these realms is largely symbolic and ceremonial. King Charles doesn't have much actual power. While some people like the idea of having a unifying figure who transcends politics, others believe, for various reasons, that it's time to cut ties. In countries like Australia and New Zealand,
Oh yeah, because it makes no sense. Like I come from Zimbabwe, man. It made no sense. Like why should I have a queen? Like what the flip?
my colleague Mike Cherney says a lot of people simply want a head of state that's from Australia or New Zealand.
Yeah.
They really chafe at this idea that the head of state of their country is basically a person who lives on the other side of the planet.
The prime ministers of both countries have expressed support for replacing the monarch, but not necessarily right now.
I believe it's likely to occur in my lifetime.
It's a different story in some Caribbean realms, like Jamaica, Antigua, and Barbuda.
It was like you can't really say much because you rely on them for economic support. Just in there.
And St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where there is more urgency to cut ties.
Fundamentally, it goes to the question of slavery, which is a very living memory in the Caribbean. As one historian has said, the Caribbean was Britain's South.
Yeah.
The Caribbean was where all of this happened.
On recent trips to the region, Prince William and his wife Kate were met with protests and calls for apologies and reparations.
The way these people be traveling around the world is if they're in a zoo. Like, what the hell, man?
In a speech, Prince William expressed his sorrow for Britain's role in slavery.
Slavery was abhorrent, and it should never have happened.
Man, y'all spent 100 million because of slavery.
During that trip, the Prime Minister of Jamaica told him that the country intends to break free of the royal family.
We are moving on.
And shortly after the Queen's death, the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda told ITV News that he plans to hold a referendum to cut ties in the coming years.
It is the final step, as I said before, to complete that circle of independence.
But legally, experts say that the process of cutting ties and changing constitutions isn't necessarily easy.
Huge challenges, possibly.
Of course, you're going to go to a bread and ask a bread how everybody can move on. And then they'll say it's very challenging because we like squeezing your necks and owning you. It's our ancestors' rights.
Insuperable.
Derek O'Brien, a researcher of Caribbean constitutional law, told me that in the remaining realms, the legal bar is quite high. Unlike Barbados, which only required a special majority vote in Parliament to become a republic last year, most remaining Caribbean realms require by law both a special majority vote among lawmakers and a successful referendum. And in some realms, the referendum must get 2/3 of the vote to pass.
As much as I would wish to do it, I can't do it without your consent. I'll have to have a referendum, and the Bahamian people have to say to me, yes.
Derek says those are huge hurdles, and he points out that several referendums have failed in the past, like in St. Vincent, Antigua, and the Bahamas.
I mean, there are a number of factors, but one common denominator was they lacked bipartisan support.
Over in Australia, a republic referendum failed in 1999.
Well, the thing is, man, you can't travel to the UK and the visas and stuff. So it's like, do you really want to leave?
Some believe it's because voters didn't like the alternative plan of picking a new head of state. And in New Zealand, a treaty viewed as a founding document of the country is between the indigenous Maori and the British Crown.
Each country has its own sort of legal situation that needs to be untangled.
In Canada, where a poll showed that half of Canadians don't think the country should continue as a constitutional monarchy, the legal bar might be the highest. There would have to be unanimous consent among the country's federal parliament and all 10 provincial legislatures. While there appears to be a surge of support for the royal family in the wake of Queen Elizabeth's death, Experts say that this global debate over who the British monarch should represent is likely to intensify in the coming months.
Okay. Well, we learned something there, man. It's always been interesting to see countries like Canada being under the British monarchy. Like, yo, why are you guys still under that? You should move on. But anyway, these things were set up way back then, and the history. We all know the history of the world is messed up, but what can we do, man? We just have to accept it and live with it. Let me know in the comment section what are your thoughts on this. My thoughts are, yeah, if countries can't move on, they should. You should do a little research on a little country called Zimbabwe. We moved on. See you guys in the next.